check. Twitch. Okay. Hi guys. Let me see, is it working? I have to see if I'm live or not. I think it's working, but the timer hasn't started yet, so I'm gonna see. Okay, now the timer has started. Okay, so today I'm gonna read Grimm's Fairy Tales. I have the book, but I'm using the PDF. I don't have the book with me, it's like in another room, but I'm gonna read this Grimm's Fairy Tales for like an hour. Okay, let me see, I'm streaming now. Streaming now. Okay. Okay, sometimes I forget the link. Okay, so right now we're gonna go to the book. We're gonna go down to page 4, I think. No, wait, it's further than that. Okay, we're gonna read The Frog Prince. Okay. Oh wait, I can't hear anything because I don't have my headphones on. Everything's messy. Sorry. Oh no. Okay. This should be better. Okay. Long ago, when wishes often came true, there lived a king whose daughters were all handsome, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who has seen everything, was bemused every time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle tree was a well, and when the day was hot, the king's daughter used to go forth into the wood and sit by the brink of the cool well. And if the time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw it up and catch it again, and this was her favorite pastime. Sorry, I'm trying to go up. This keeps skipping pages. Her favorite pastime. Okay. Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of falling back into the maiden's little hand, which had sent it aloft, dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it up with her eyes as it sank, but the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping, she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, it's you, old waddler," said she. "I weep because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Never mind, do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I fetch your ball again?" "Whatever you like, dear frog," and she. "Any of my clothes, my pearls and jewels, or even the golden crown that I wear." "Your clothes, your pearls and jewels, and your golden crown are not for me," answered the frog. "But if you would love me and have me for your companion and playfellow, let me sit by you at table and eat from your plate and drink from your cup and sleep in your little bed. If you would promise all this, then I would dive below the water and fetch you your golden ball again." "Oh yes," she answered, "I will promise it all. Whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again." But she thought to herself, what nonsense he talks, as if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak with the other frogs, or could possibly be any one's companion. But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank down out of sight. But after a while he came to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again, and she caught it up and ran off with it. "Stop, stop," cried the frog. "Take me up too. I cannot run as fast as you." But it was of no use, for croak, croak after as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home, and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well again. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all the court, and eating from her golden plate, there came something pitter-patter up the marble stairs, and then there came a knocking at the door, and the voice cried, "Young king's daughter, let me in." And she got up and ran to see who it could be. But when she opened the door, there was the frog sitting outside. Then she shut the door hastily and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there a giant standing at the door ready to carry you away?" "Oh, no," answered she, "no giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" said the king. "Oh, dear father," answered she, "when I was sitting by the well yesterday and playing with my golden ball, fell into the water, and while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it again for me on condition I would let him be my companion. But I never thought that he would leave the water and come after me. But now there he is outside the door, and he wants to come in to me." And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest king's daughter, open to me by the well water. What promised you me?" "Youngest king's daughter, now open to me." That which thou hast promised must thou perform," said the king. "So go now and let him in." So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in. Following her heels, she reacted her. Oh wait, whoops. So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following her at her heels, till she reached her chair. Then he stopped and cried, "Lift me up to sit by you." But she delayed doing so until the king ordered her. When once the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table, and there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate a little nearer, so that we may eat together." And so she did. Everybody might see how unwilling she was, and the frog feasted heartily, but every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I have had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room and make ready your silken bed, and we'll lie down and go to sleep." Then the king's daughter began to weep, and was afraid of the cold frog, but that nothing would satisfy him, but he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with her, saying, "That which thou hast promised in thy time of necessity must thou now perform." So she picked up the frog with her finger and thumb, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. And when she had lain down to sleep, he came creeping up, saying, "I am tired and want sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I'm telling your father. Oh, or I will tell your father." Then she felt beside herself with rage, and picking him up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, "Now will you be quiet, you horrid frog?" But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog, and became all at once a prince with beautiful kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom. Oh, that was fast. And he told her how a wicked witch had bound him by her spells, and how no one but she alone could have released him, and that they two would go together to his father's kingdom. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with white plumes on their heads, and with golden harness, and behind the carriage was standing faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now faithful Henry had suffered such care and pain when his master was turned into a frog that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his heart to keep it from breaking with trouble and anxiety. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. And when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage, as if something had broken, and he turned round and cried, "Henry, the wheel must be breaking." But Henry answered, "The wheel does not break, 'tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart." Again, and yet once again, there was the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking. But it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart, because he was so relieved and happy. Okay, that was The Frog Prince. Now I'm going to read The Gallant Tailor. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting on his board near the window and working cheerfully with all his might, when an old woman came down the street crying, "Good jelly to sell, good jelly to sell." The cry sounded pleasant in the little tailor's ears, so he put his head out of the window and called out, "Here, my good woman, come here if you want a customer." So the poor woman climbed the steps with her heavy basket, and was obliged to unpack and display all her pots to the tailor. He looked at every one of them, and lifting all the lids, applied his nose to each, and said at last, "The jelly seems pretty good. You may weigh me out 4½ ounces, or I don't mind having a 1/4 of a pound." Okay, 1/4 pounder. The woman, who had expected to find a good customer, gave him what he asked for. Oh, let's see, anyone commenting? Yeah, that was fast. Got my copy ready to read along. Oh, thank you, Mr. Dado Chama. I think I have a different copy, but go ahead and read your copy. I hope it is good. The woman, who had expected to find a good customer, gave him what he asked for, but he went off angry and grumbling. "This jelly is the very thing for me," he cried the little tailor. "It will give me strength and cunning." And he took down the bread from the cupboard, cut a hole round of the loaf, and spread the jelly on it, laid it near him, and went on stitching more gallantly than ever. All the while the scent of the sweet jelly was spreading throughout the room, where there were quantities of flies who were attracted by it and flew to partake. "Now then, who asked you to come?" said the tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. But the flies, not understanding his language, were not to be got rid of like that, and returned in larger numbers than before. Then the tailor, not being able to stand it any longer, took from his chimney corner a rag cloth, and saying, "Now I'll let you have it," beat it among them unmercifully when he ceased. And counted the slain, he found 7 lying dead before him. "This is indeed somewhat," he said, wondering at his own gallantry. "The whole town shall know this." So he hastened to cut out a belt, and he stitched it and put it on his large capitals. 7 at one blow, the town, did I say, said the little tailor. The whole world shall know it, and his heart quivered with joy, like a lamb's tail. The tailor fastened the bell round him and began to think of going out into the world, for his workshop seemed too small for his worship. So he looked about in all the house for something that would be useful to take with him. But he found nothing but an old cheese, which he put in his pocket. Outside the door he noticed that a bird had got caught in the bushes. As he took that and put it in his pocket with the cheese, then he set out gallantly on his way, and he was light and active. He felt no fatigue. The way led over a mountain, and when he reached the topmost peak, he saw a terrible giant sitting there and looking about him at his ease. The tailor went bravely up to him, called out to him, and said, "Comrade, good day. There you sit looking over the wide world. I am on my way thither to seek my fortune. Have you a fancy to go with me?" The giant looked at the tailor contemptuously and said, "You little rascal, you miserable fellow. That may be," answered the little tailor, and undoing his coat, he showed his giant belt. "You can read there whether I am a man or not." The giant read 7 at one blow, and thinking it meant man that the tailor had killed, felt at once more respect for the little fellow. But as he wanted to prove him, he took up a stone and squeezed it so hard that the water came out of it. "Now you can do that," said the giant. "That is, if you have the strength for it." "That's not much," said the little tailor. I call that play." And he put his hand in his pocket and took out the cheese and squeezed it so that the whey ran out of it. "Well," he said, "what do you think of that?" The giant did not know what to say, for he could not have believed it of the little man. Then the giant took up a stone and threw it so high that it was nearly out of sight. "Now, little fellows, I suppose you do that." "Well thrown," said the tailor, but the stone fell back to earth again. I will throw you one that will never come back." So he felt in his pocket, took out his bird, and flew it into the air. And the bird, when it found itself at liberty, took wing, flew off, and returned no more. "What do you think of that, comrade?" asked the tailor. "There is no doubt that you can throw," said the giant, "but we will see if you can carry." He led the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which had been felled and was lying on the ground, and said, "Now, if you are strong enough, help me carry this tree out of the wood." "Willingly," answered the little man. "You take the trunk on your shoulders. I will take the branches with all their foliage. That is much the most difficult." So the giant took the trunk on his shoulders, and the tailor seated himself on the branch, and the giant, who could not see what he was doing, had the whole tree to carry, and the little man on it as well. And the little man was cheerful and merry, and whistled the tune. There was 3 tailors riding by, as if carrying the tree was mere child's play. The giant, when he had struggled on under his heavy load a part of the way, was tired, and cried, "Look here, I must let go of the tree." The tailor jumped off quickly, and taking hold of the tree with both arms, as if he were carrying it, and to the giant, "You see, you can't carry the tree through, though you are such a big fellow." They went on together a little further, and presently they came to a cherry tree. The giant took hold of the topmost branches, where the ripest fruit hung, and pulling them downwards, gave them to the tailor to hold, bidding him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and as the giant let go, the tree sprang back, and the tailor was caught up into the air. And when he dropped down again without any damage, the tree said to him, "How is this? Haven't you strength enough to hold such a weak sprig as that?" "It's not strength that is lacking," answered the little tailor. How should it be to one who has slain 7 at one blow? I just jumped over the tree because the hunters are shooting down there in the bushes. You jump it too if you can." The giant made the attempt, and not being able to vault the tree, he remained hanging in the branches, so that once more the little tailor got the better of him. Then said the giant, if you are such a gallant fellow, suppose you come with me to our den and stay the night." The tailor was quite willing, and he followed him. When they reached the den, there sat some other giants by the fire, and each had a roasted sheep in his hand and was eating it. The little tailor looked round and thought, "There is more elbow room here than in my workshop." And the giant showed him a bed, and told him he had better lie down upon it and go to sleep. The bed was, however, too big for the tailor, so he did not stay in it, but crept into a corner to sleep. As soon as it was midnight, the giant got up and took a great staff of iron, and beat the bed through with one stroke, and suppose he had made an end of that grasshopper of a tailor. Very early in the morning the giants went into the wood and forgot all about the little tailor, and when they saw him coming after them alive and merry, they were terribly frightened, and thinking he was going to kill them, he ran away in all haste. So the little tailor marched on, always following his nose, and after he had gone a great way, he entered the courtyard belonging to a king's palace, and there he felt so overpowered with fatigue that he lay down and fell asleep. In the meanwhile came various people, who looked at him curiously, and read on his belt, 7 at one blow. Oh, said they, why should this great lord come here in time of peace? What a mighty champion he must be. Then they went and told the king about him, and they thought that if war should break out, what a worthy and useful man he would be, and he ought not to be allowed to depart at any price. The king then summoned his council and sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to beg him, as soon as he should wake up, to consent to serve in the king's army. So the messenger stood and waited at the sleeper's side until the limbs began to stretch and his eyes to open, and then he carried his answer back. And the answer was that was the reason for which I came. I am ready to enter the king's service. Okay, how many pages is this? Okay, about 3.5. Oh, there's another giant in the tailor. Oh, okay. There was another giant. It says the gallant. Oh, this one's the gallant tailor. Okay, sorry. Okay, we're on page 8. So he was received into it very honorably, and a separate dwelling set apart for him. But the rest of the soldiers were very much set against the little tailor, and they wished him 1,000 miles away. "What shall be done about it?" they said among themselves. "If we pick a quarrel and fight with him, then several of us will fall at each blow. That will be of no good to us." So they came to a resolution, and went all together to the king to ask for their discharge. We never intended," said they, "to serve with a man who kills 7 at a blow. The king felt sorry to lose all his faithful servants because of one man, and he wished that he had never seen him, and would willingly get rid of him if he might. But he did not dare to dismiss the little tailor for fear he should kill all the king's people, and place himself upon the throne. He thought a long while about it, and at last he made up his mind what to do. He sent for the little tailor and told him that he was so great a warrior he had a proposal to make to him. He told him that in a wood in his dominions dwelt two giants who did great damage by robbery, murder, and fire, and that no man durst go near for fear of his life, but that the tailor should overcome and slay both these giants. The king would give him his only daughter in marriage, half the kingdom as dowry, and that 100 horsemen would go with him to give him his assistance. That would be something for a man like me, thought the little tailor. A beautiful princess and half a kingdom are not to be had every day. And he said to the king, "Oh yes, I can soon overcome the giants, and yet have no need for the 100 horsemen. He who can kill 7 at one blow has no need to be afraid of 2." So the little tailor set out, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the border of the wood, he said to his escort, "Stay here while I go to attack the giants." Then he sprang into the wood and looked about him right and left. After a while he caught sight of the 2 giants. They were lying down under a tree, asleep and snoring so that all the branches shook. The little tailor, all alive, filled both his pockets with stones and climbed up the tree, and made his way to an overhanging bough so that he could seat himself just above the sleepers, and from there he let one stone after another fall onto his chest of one of the giants. For a long time the giants were quite unaware of this, but at last he waked up and punished his comrade and said, "What are you hitting me for?" "You are dreaming," said the other. "I am not touching you." And they composed themselves again to sleep, and the tailor let fall a stone on the other giant. What can that be?" he cried. "What are you casting at me?" "I am casting nothing at you," answered the first, grumbling. They disputed about it for a while, but as they were tried, they gave it up at last, and their eyes closed once more. Then the little tailor began his game anew, picked out a heavier stone and threw it down with force upon the first giant's chest. "This is too much," cried he, and sprang up like a madman and struck his companion such a blow that the tree shook above them. The other paid him back with ready coin, and they fought with such fury that they tore up trees by their roots to use for weapons against each other. So at last they both of them lay dead upon the ground. And now the little tailor got down. "Another piece of luck," said he, "that the tree was sitting in did not get torn up or two, or else I should have had to jump like a squirrel from one tree to another." Then he drew his sword and gave each of the giants a few backs in the breast, and went back to the horsemen and said that the deed is done. I have made an end of both of them, but it went hard with me. In the struggle they rooted up trees to defend themselves, but it was of no use. They had to do with a man who can kill 7 at one blow. "Then are you not wounded?" asked the horseman. "Nothing of the sort," answered the tailor. I have not turned a hair." The horsemen still would not believe it, and rode into the wood to see, and there they found the giants wallowing in their blood, and all about them lying the uprooted trees. The little tailor then claimed the promised boon, but the king repented him of his offer, and he sought again how to rid himself of the hero. "For you can possess my daughter and the half of my kingdom," he said to the tailor. "You must perform another heroic act. In the wood lives a unicorn who does great damage. You must secure him. A unicorn does not strike more terror into me than two giants. A 7 at 1 blow, that is my way," was the tailor's answer. So taking a rope and an axe with him, he went out to the wood and told those who were ordered to attend him to wait outside. He had not far to seek. The unicorn soon came out and sprang at him, as if he would make an end of him without delay. "Softly, softly," he said, "most haste, worst speed," and remained standing until the animal came quite near. Then he slid quietly behind a tree. The unicorn ran with all his might against the tree and stuck his horn so deep into the trunk that he could not get it out again, and so was taken. "Now I have you," said the tailor. "Come up behind the tree," and putting the rope round the unicorn's neck, he took the axe, set free the horn, and when all his party were assembled, he led forth the animal and brought it to the king. The king did not yet wished to give him the promised reward, and set him a third task to do. Before the wedding could take place, the tailor was to secure a wild boar, which had done a great deal of damage in the wood. The huntsmen were to accompany him. "All right," said the tailor, "this is child's play." But he did not take the huntsmen into the wood, and they were all the better pleased, for the wild boar had many a time before received them in such a way that they had no fancy to disturb him. When the boar caught sight of the tailor, he ran at him with foaming mouth and gleaming tusks to bear him to the ground. But the nimble hero rushed into a chapel which chanced to be near, and jumped quickly out of a window on the other side. The boar ran after him, and when he got inside, the door shut after him, and there he was imprisoned, for the creature was too big and unwieldy to jump out of the window too. Then the little tailor called the huntsmen, that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes, and then he betook himself to the king, who now, whether he liked it or not, was obliged to fulfill his promise, and give him his daughter and the half of his kingdom. But if he had known that the great warrior was only a little tailor, he would have taken it still more to heart. So the wedding was celebrated with great splendor and little joy, and the tailor was made into a cake. One night the young queen heard her husband talking in his sleep and saying, "Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders." And so, as she perceived of what low birth her husband was, she went to her father the next morning and told him all, and begged him to set her free from a man who was nothing better than a tailor. The king bade her be confronted, saying, "Tonight leave your bedroom door open. My guards shall stand outside, and when he is asleep, they shall come in and bind him, and carry him off to a ship, and he shall be sent to the other side of the world." So the wife felt consoled, but the king's water-bearer, who had been listening all the while, went to the tailor and disclosed to him the whole plan. "I shall put a stop to all this," said he. At night he lay down as usual in bed. When his wife thought that he was asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who only made believe he was asleep, began to murmur plainly, "Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders. I have slain 7 at 1 blow, killed 2 giants, caught a unicorn, and taken a wild boar. Shall I be afraid of those who are standing outside my room door?" And when they heard the tailor say this, a giant fear seized them, and fled away as if they had been wild hares. None of them would venture to attack him, and so the little tailor remained a king all his lifetime. The giant and the tailor. Any new chat? Yeah, that was fast. The copies are similar enough anyways. Pocket cheese. Yep, a lot of pocket cheese. The giant and the tailor. A certain tailor who was great at boasting but poor at doing, took it into his head to go abroad for a while and look about the world. As soon as he could manage it, he left his workshop and wandered on his way, over hill and dale, sometimes hither, sometimes thither, but even on and on. Once when he was out, he perceived in the blue distance a steep hill, and buried it a tower reaching to the clouds, which rose up out of the wild dark forest. Thunder and lightning, cried the tailor. What is that? And as he was strongly goaded by curiosity, he went boldly towards it. But what made the tailor open his eyes and mouth when he came near it was to see that the tower had legs, and leapt in one bound over the steep hill, and was now standing as an all-powerful giant before him. What do you want here, you little fly-leg? Cried the giant with a voice as if it were thundering on every side. The tailor remembered, I want just to look about and see if I can earn a bit of bread for myself in this forest. If that is what you're after, said the giant, you may have a place with me. If it must be, why not? What wages shall I receive? You shall hear what wages you shall have. Every year 365 days, and when it is a leap year, one more into the bargain. Does that suit you? All right, replied the tailor, and thought in his own mind, a man must cut his coat according to his cloth. I will try to get away as fast as I can. On this, the giant said to him, "Go, little ragamuffin, go fetch me a jug of water. Had I not better bring the well itself at once, and the spring too?" asked the boaster, and went into the pitcher to the water. What? The well and the spring too, growled the giant in his beard, for he was rather clownish and stupid, and began to be afraid. That knave is not a fool, he has a wizard in his body. Be on your guard, old Hans, this is no serving man for you. When the tailor had brought the water, the giant bade him go back to the forest, and cut a couple of blocks of wood and bring them back. Why not the whole forest at once, with one stroke, the whole forest, young and old, with all that there, both rough and smooth? asked the little tailor, and went to cut the wood. What, the whole forest, young and old, with all that there, both rough and smooth, and the well and its spring too? Growled the credulous giant in his beard, and was still more terrified. The knave can do. The knave can do much more than bake apples, and has a wizard in his body. Be on your guard, old Hans. This is no serving man for you. When the tailor had brought the wood, the giant commanded him to shoot 2 or 3 wild boars for supper. Why not rather 1,000 or one shot, and bring them all here? Inquired the ostentatious tailor. What? Cried the timid giant in great terror. Let well alone tonight, and lie down to rest. The giant was so terribly alarmed that he could not close an eye all night long, for thinking that would be the best way to get rid of this accursed sorcerer of a servant. Time brings counsel. Next morning the giant and the tailor went to a marsh round which stood a number of the willow trees. Then said the giant, "Hark you, tailor, seat yourself on one of the willow branches. I long of all things to see if you are big enough to bend it down." All at once the tailor was sitting on it, holding his breath and making himself so heavy that the bough bent down. When, however, he was compelled to draw breath, it hurried him, for unfortunately he had not put his goose in his pocket, so high into the air that he never was seen again. And this to the great delight of the giant is the tailor. If the tailor has not fallen down again, he must be hovering about it in the air. The Little Farmer. There was a certain village where lived many rich farmers and only one poor one whom they called the Little Farmer. He had not even a cow and still had less money to buy one, and he and his wife greatly wished for such a thing. One day he said to her, "Listen, I have a good idea. If it is that your godfather, the joiner, shall make us a calf of wood and paint it brown, so as to look like any other, and then in time perhaps it will grow big and become a cow." This notion pleased the wife, and godfather joiner set to work to saw and plane. As soon turned out a calf complete, with its head down and neck stretched out as if it were grazing. The next morning, as the cows were driven to the pasture, the little farmer called out to the drover, "Look here, I have got a little calf to go, but it is still young and must be carried." "All right," said the drover, and tucked it into his arm, carried it into the meadows, and stood it in the grass, so the calf stayed where it was put, and seemed to be eating all the time. And the drover thought to himself, it will soon be able to run alone if it grazes at that rate." In the evening, when the herds had to be driven home, he said to the calf, "If you can stand there eating like that, you can walk off on your own four legs. I am not going to lug your underarm again. Lug you under my arm again." But the little farmer was standing by his house door and waiting for his calf. And when he saw the cow herd coming through the village without it, he asked what it meant. The cow herd answered, it is still out there eating away," and never attended to the call, and would not come with the rest. Then the little farmer said, "Well, I will tell you what I must have my beast brought home. Oh, I will tell you what I must have my beast brought home." Okay. And they went together through the fields in the quest of it, but someone had stolen it, and it was gone. And the drover said, "Most likely it has run away." But the little farmer said, "Not it," and brought the cow herd before the bailiff, who ordered him for his carelessness to give the little farmer a cow for the missing calf. So now the little farmer and his wife possessed their long-wished for cow. They rejoiced with all their hearts, but unfortunately they had no fodder for it, and could give it nothing to eat, so that before long they had to kill it. Oh no! Its flesh they salted down, and the little farmer went to the town to sell the skin and buy a new calf with what he got for it. On the way he came to a mill where a raven was sitting with broken wings, and he took it up out of pity and wrapped it in the skin. The weather was very stormy, and it had blew and rained, so he turned into the mill and asked for shelter. The miller's wife was alone in the town, and she said to the little farmer, "Well, come in and lie down in the straw." And she gave him a piece of bread and cheese. So the little farmer ate, and they laid down with his skin near him, and the miller's wife thought he was sleeping with fatigue. After a while in came another man, and the miller's wife received him very well, saying, "My husband is out, but we will make good cheer." The little farmer listened to what they said. When he heard good cheer spoken of, he grew angry to think he had been put off with bread and cheese, for the miller's wife presently brought out roast meat, salad, cakes, and wine. Now as the pair were sitting down at their feet, there came a knock at the door. "Oh dear," cried the woman, "it's my husband." In a twinkling she popped the roast meat into the oven, the wine under the pillow, the salad in the bed, and cakes under the bed, and the man in the linen closet. Then she opened the door to her husband, saying, "Thank goodness you are here. What weather it is!" As if the world was coming to an end. When the miller saw the little farmer lying in the straw, he said, "What fellow have you got there?" "Oh," said the wife, "the poor chap came in the midst of the wind and rain and asked for a shelter, so I gave him some bread and cheese and spread some straw for him." The husband answered, "Oh, well, I have no objection, only get me something to eat at once." But the wife said, "There's nothing but bread and cheese." "Anything will do for me," answered the miller. "Bread and cheese forever." And catching sight of the little farmer, he cried, "Come along and keep me company." The little farmer did not wait to be asked twice, but sat down and ate. After a while the miller noticed the skin lying on the ground with the raven wrapped up in it, and he said, "What have you got there?" The little farmer answered, "A fortune teller." And the miller asked, "Can he tell my fortune?" "Why not?" "Why not?" answered the little farmer. He will tell four things, but the fifth he keeps to himself." Now the miller became very curious and said, "Ask him to say something." And the little farmer pinched the raven so that it croaked. "Krr, krr, what does he say?" said the miller. And the little farmer answered, "First he says that there is wine under the pillow." "That would be jolly," cried the miller, and he went to look and found wine, and then asked, "What's next?" So the little farmer made the raven croak again. Then he says secondly that there is roast meat in the oven." "That would be jolly," cried the miller, and he went and looked, and found the roast meat. The little farmer made the fortune teller speak again, and then he said thirdly that there is salad in the bed. "That would be jolly," cried the miller, and went and looked and found the salad. Once more the little farmer pinched the raven so that he croaked. He says fourthly and lastly, are there cakes under the bed?" "That would be jolly," cried the miller, and he went and looked and found the cakes. And now the two sat down to table, and the miller's wife felt very uncomfortable. And she went to bed and looked at all the keys with her, and took all the keys with her. The miller was eager to know what the fifth thing could be. But the little farmer said, "Suppose we eat the four things in peace first, for the fifth thing is a great deal worse." So they sat and ate, and while they ate, they bargained together as to how much the miller would give for knowing the fifth thing, and at last they agreed upon $300. The little farmer pinched the raven so that he croaked aloud, and the miller asked what he said, and the little farmer answered, "He says that there is a demon in the linen closet." Then said the miller, "That demon must come out of the linen closet," and he unbarred the house door while the little farmer got the key of the linen closet from the miller's wife and opened it. Then the man rushed forth and out the house, and the miller said, "I saw the black rogue with my own eyes, so that is a good riddance." And the little farmer took himself off by daybreak next morning with $300. And after this, the little farmer by degrees got out in the world, and built himself a good house. And the other farmer said, "Surely the little farmer has been where it rains gold pieces, and has brought home so many by the bushel." And when he was summoned before the bailiff to say whence his riches came, and all he said was, "I sold my calf skin for $300. When other farmers heard that they wished to share such good luck and ran home. Killed all their cows, skinned them in order to sell them also for the same high price as the little farmer, and the bailiff said, I must be beforehand with them. So he sent his servant into the town to the skin buyer, and only gave her $3 for the skin. And that was faring better than the others, for when they came, they did not get as much as that, for the skin buyer said, what am I to do with all these skins? Okay, what am I to do with all these skins? Now the other farmers were very angry with the little farmer for misleading them, and they vowed vengeance against him and went to complain to his deceit for the bailiff. The poor little farmer was with one voice sentenced to death and to be put to a cask with holes in it, and rolled into the water. So he was led to execution, and a priest was fetched to say a mass for him. And the rest of the people had to stand in a distance. As soon as the little farmer caught sight of the priest, he knew him for the man who was hid in the linen closet at the miller's. And he said to him, as I let you out of the cupboard, you must let me out of the cask. At that moment a shepherd passed with a flock of sheep, and the little farmer, knowing him to have a great wish to become bailiff himself, called out with all his might, no, I will not, and if the world asked me, I would not. The shepherd, hearing him, came up and asked what it was he would do. The little farmer answered, they want to make me bailiff. If I sit in this cask, I will not do it. The shepherd said, if that is all there is in order to become bailiff, I will sit in the cask and welcome. Said the little farmer answered, and the little farmer answered, yes, it is all just you get into the cask and let you become bailiff. So the shepherd agreed and got in, and the little farmer fastened on the top, and he collected the herd of sheep and drove them away. The priest went back to the parish assembly and told them the mass had been said. Then they came and began to roll the cask into the water, and as it went, the shepherd inside called out, I consent to be bailiff. They thought that it was a little farmer who spoke, and they answered, all right. But first you must go down below and look about you a little. And they rolled the cask into the water. Upon that the farmers went home, and when they reached the village, they met the little farmer driving a flock of sheep and looking quite calm and contented. The farmers were astonished and cried, little farmer, whence come you? How did you get out of the water? Oh, easily, he answered. I sank and sank until I came to the bottom. Then I broke through the cask and came out of it. And there were beautiful meadows and plenty of sheep feeding. So I brought away this flock with me. Then the little farmers, are there any left? Oh yes, answered the little farmer, more than they can possibly need. Then the farmers agreed that they would go back and fetch some sheep, also each man a flock for himself. And the bailiff said, me first. And they all went together. In the blue sky there were little fleecy clouds like lambkins, and they were reflected in the water. And the farmers cried out, there are the sheep down there at the bottom. When the bailiff heard, they pressed forward and said, I will go first and look about me, and if things look well, I will call to you. And he jumped plump into the water, and they all thought that the noise he made meant come. So the whole company jumped in one after the others. So perished all the proprietors of the village, and the little farmer, as sole heir, became a rich man. The Golden Key. In the winter time, when deep snow lay on the ground, a poor boy was forced to go out on a sledge to fetch wood. When he had gathered it together and packed it, he wished, as he was so frozen with cold, not to go home at once, but to light a fire and warm himself a little. So he scraped away the snow, and as he was thus clearing the ground, he found a tiny gold key. Hereupon he thought that where the key was, the lock must be also, and dug it in the ground and found an iron chest. If the key does but fit it, thought he. No doubt that there are precious things in that little box. He searched, but no keyhole was there. At last he discovered one, but so small that it was hardly visible. He tried it, and the key fitted it exactly. Then he turned it once around, and now we must wait until that he has quite unlocked it and opened the lid, and then we shall learn what beautiful things were lying in that box. Any new comments? Demons in the Closet is my favorite horror monster and a classic. Oh, nice. The Little Farmer story was very tricky. Yeah, it was. But the farmer was smart, I think. Okay, these are some short stories. Sharing joy and sorrow. There was once a tailor who was a quarrelsome fellow, and his wife was good, industrious, and pious, never could please him. Whenever she did, he was not satisfied, but grumbled and scolded and knocked her about and beat her. Oof. As the authorities at last heard of it, they had him summoned and put in prison in order to make him better. He was kept for a while on bread and water and then set free again. He was forced, however, to promise not to beat his wife any more, but to live with her in peace and share joy and sorrow with her, as married people ought to do. All well on well for a time, but then he fell into his old ways, and surely and quarrelsome, and because he dared not beat her, he would seize her by the hair and tear it out. The woman escaped from him and sprang out into the yard, and he ran after her with his yard measure and scissors, and chased her about, and threw the yard measure and scissors at her, and whatever else came in his way. When he hit her he laughed, and when he missed her he stormed and swore. This went on so long that the neighbors came to the wife's assistance. The tailor was again summoned before the magistrates and reminded of his promise. Dear gentlemen, he said, I have kept my word. I have not beaten her, but I have shared joy and sorrow with her. How can that be? Said the judge, when she continually brings such heavy complaints against you. I have not beaten her just because she looked so strange. I wanted to comb her hair with her hand. She, however, got away from me and left me quite spitefully. Then I hurried after her, and in order to bring her back to her duty, I threw it at her as well as a well-meant admonition, whatever came readily to hand. I have shared joy and sorrow with her also, for wherever I hit her, I was full of joy and she of sorrow, and if I missed her, then she was joyful, and I sorry. And I sorry. The judges were not satisfied with this answer, but gave him the reward he deserved. The nail. A merchant had done good business at the fair. He had told his wares and lined his money bags with gold and silver. Then he wanted to travel homewards and be in his own house before nightfall, so he packed his trunk and with the money on his horse and rode away. At noon he rested in a town, and when he wanted to go further, the stable boy brought out his horse and said, "A nail is wanting, sir, in the shoe of its left hind foot." Let it be wanting," answered the merchant. "The shoe will certainly stay on. For 6 miles I have still to go. I am in a hurry." In the afternoon, when he once more alighted and had his horse fed, the stable boy went into the room to him and said, "Sir, a shoe is missing from your horse's left hind foot." Shall I take him to the blacksmith? Let it still be wanting, answered the man. The horse can very well hold out for the couple of miles which remain. I am in haste. He rode forth, but before long the horse began to limp. It had not limped long before it began to stumble, and it had not stumbled long before it fell down and broken his leg. The merchant was forced to leave leave the horse where it was, and unbuckle the trunk, take it on his back, and go home on foot. And there he had not arrived until quite late at night. And that unlucky nail, said to himself, has caused all this disaster. Make haste slowly. Okay, Tom Thumb. There was once a poor countryman who used to sit in the chimney corner all evening and poke the fire, while his wife sat in the spinning wheel. And he used to say, "How dull is it without any children, without about us, our house is so quiet, and other people's houses are so noisy and merry." "Yes," answered his wife, and sighed, if we could only have one, and that one ever so little, no bigger than my thumb. Now, how happy I would be! It would indeed be having our heart's desire." Now it happened after a while the woman had a child whose parents was perfect in all his limbs, but no bigger than a thumb. Then the parents said, "He is just what we wished for, and we love him very much." And they named him according to his stature, Tom Thumb, and thought they gave him plenty of nourishment. He grew no bigger, but remained exactly the same size as when he was first born. And he had very good faculties, and was very quick and prudent, so that all he did prospered. One day his father made ready to go into the forest to cut wood, and he asked to himself, "Now I wish there was some one to bring the cart to me." "Oh, father," cried Tom Thumb, "if I can bring the cart, let me alone for that, and in proper time too." Then the father laughed and said, "How will you manage that? You are much too little to hold the reins." "That has nothing to do with it, father. While my mother goes on with her spinning, I will sit in the horse's ear, and will tell him where to go." "Well," answered the father, "we will try it for once." When it was time to set off, the mother went on spinning. After setting Tom Thumb in the horse's ear, then and so he drove off, crying, "Giup, Giwo." Oh, Giwo? Okay, I don't know. Giup, Giwo. So the horse went on quite as if his master were driving him, and drew the wagon along the right road to the wood. Now it happened just as they turned a corner, and the little fellow was calling out, "Giup," that two strange men passed by. The driver is calling to the horse, and yet he is nowhere to be seen. "It is strange," said the other. "We will follow the wagon and see where it belongs." And the wagon went right through the forest up to the place where the wood had been hewed. When Tom Thumb caught sight of his father, he cried out, "Look, father, here I am with the wagon. Now take me down." The father held the horse with his left hand, and with the right he lifted down in his son out of the horse's ear. And Tom Thumb sat down on a stump, and quite happy and content. When the two strangers saw him, they struck dumb with wonder. At last one of them, taking the other side, said to him, "Look, here the little chap would make our fortune if we were to show him the town for money. Suppose we buy him." So they went up to the woodcutter and said, "Sell the little man to us. We will take care he shall come to no harm." "No," answered the father. He is the apple of my eye, and not for all the money in the world I would sell him." But Tom Thumb, when he heard what was going on, climbed up his father's coattails and perching himself on his shoulder, he whispered to his ear, "Father, you might as well let me go. I will soon come back again." Then the father gave up to the two men for a large piece of money. They asked him where he would like to sit. "Oh, put me on the brim of your hat," said he. "There I can walk about and view the country and be in no danger of falling off." So they did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, he set off all together, and they traveled on until it grew dark, and the little fellow asked to be set down a little while for change. And after some difficulty they consented. So the man took him down from his hat and set him in a field by the roadside. And he ran away directly, and after creeping about among the furrows, he slipped suddenly into a mouse hole, just what he was looking for. "Good evening, masters. You can go home without me," cried he to them, laughing. They ran up and fell about with their sticks in the mouse hole, but in vain. Tom Thumb crept further and further in, as it was growing dark, they had to make the best of their way home, full of vexation and with empty purses. When Tom Thumb found they were gone, he crept out of his hiding place underground. "It is dangerous work groping around these holes in the darkness," said he. I might easily break my neck." But by good fortune he came upon an empty shell. "That's all right," said he. "Now I can get safely through the night," and he settled himself down in it. Before he had time to go to sleep, he heard two men pass by, and one was saying to the other, "How can we manage to get hold of the rich person's gold and silver?" "How? I can tell you how," cried Tom Thumb. "How is this?" said one of the thieves, quite frightened. I hear someone speak." So they stood still and listened, and Tom Thumb spoke again. "Take me with you. I will show you how to do it." "Where are you, then?" asked they. "Look around on the ground and notice where the voice comes from," answered he. At last they found him and lifted him up. "You little elf," said they, "how can you help us?" "Look here," answered he, "I can easily creep up between the iron bars of the person's room and hand you whatever you like to have." "Very well," said they, we will try what you can do." So when they came to the parsonage house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but cried out with all his might, "Will you have all that is here?" So the thieves were terrified and said, "Do speak more softly, lest anyone should be awake." But Tom Thumb made as if he did not hear them. He cried out again, "What would you like? Will you have all that is here?" So that the cook, who was sleeping in a room hard by, heard it, and raised himself in bed and listened. The thieves, however, in their fear of being discovered, had run back part of the way, but they took courage again, thinking that it was only a jest of the little fellow's. So they come back and whispered to him to be serious, and to hand them out something. Then Tom Thumb called out once more as loud as he could, "Oh yes, I will give it all to you, only put out your hands." Then the listening maid heard him distinctly that time, and jumped out of bed and burst open the door. The thieves ran off as if the wild huntsmen were behind them, but the maid said she could see nothing, went to fetch a light, and when she came back with one, Tom Thumb had taken himself off without being seen by her into the barn, and the maid went she had looked in every hole and corner and found nothing. Went back to bed at last and thought that she must have been dreaming, with her eyes and ears open. So Tom Thumb crept among the hay and found a comfortable nook to sleep in, when he intended where he intended to remain until it was day, and then go home to his father and mother. But other things were to befall him indeed. There is nothing but trouble and worry in his world. The maid got up at dawn at dawn of day to feed cows. The first place she went to was the barn, where she took up an armful of hay, and it had happened to be in the very heap which Tom Thumb lay asleep, and he was so fast asleep that he was aware of nothing and never waked until he was in the mouth of the cow, who had taken him up with the hay. "Oh dear," cried he, "how is it that I have gotten into the mill?" But he soon found out where he was, and he had to be very careful not to get between the cow's teeth. Let's see, 1, 2. Oh, this is about, okay, so about 20, okay, 28. Sorry. Huh. Okay, so about like 5 more pages until the next story. To get between the cow's teeth, and last he had to descend into the cow's stomach. The windows were forgotten when this little room was built. And the sunshine cannot get in. There is no light to be had. The quarters were in very way unpleasant to him, and what was worse, new hay was constantly coming in, and the space was being filled up. At last he cried out his extremity as loud as he could, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" The maid was then milking the cow, and as she heard a voice, but could see no one, and as it was the same voice that she had heard in the night, she was so frightened that she fell off her stool and spilled her milk. Then she ran in great haste to her master, crying, "Oh, master dear, the cow spoke." "You must be crazy," answered the master. And he went himself to the cow house to see what was the matter. No sooner had he put his foot inside the door than Tom Thumb cried out again, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" Then the parson himself was frightened, supposing that a bad spirit had entered the cow, and he ordered her to be put to death. So she was killed, but the stomach where Tom Thumb was lying was thrown upon a dunghill. Tom Thumb had great trouble to work his way out of it, and he had just made a space big enough. Great trouble to work his way out of it, and he had just made a space big enough for his head to go through. When a new misfortune happened, a hungry wolf ran up and swallowed the whole stomach at one gulp. But Tom Thumb did not lose courage. "Perhaps," thought he, "the wolf will listen to reason." And he cried out from the inside of the wolf, My dear wolf, I can tell you where to get a splendid meal." "Where would that be had?" said the wolf. In such a house that you may creep into through a drain, and there you will find cakes and bacon and broth, as much as you can eat." And he described him to his father's house. The wolf, indeed, not to be told twice, he squeezed himself through the drain out in the night, and feasted in the storeroom to his heart's content. When at last he was satisfied, he wanted to go away again, but he had become so big that to creep the same way back was impossible. This Tom Thumb had reckoned upon, and began to make a terrible din inside the wolf, crying and calling out as loud as he could. "Will you be quiet?" said the wolf. You will wake the folks up." "Look here," cried the little man, "you are very well satisfied, and now I will do something for my own enjoyment," and began again. to make the noise he could. At last the father and mother were awakened, and they ran to the room door and peeped through the chink. And when they saw a wolf in occupation, they ran and fetched weapons, the man an axe, and the wife a scythe. "Stay behind," said the man, as they entered the room. When I have given him a blow, and it did not seem to have killed him, when you must cut at him with your scythe." Then Tom Thumb heard his voice and cried, "Dear father, I am in the wolf inside." Then the father called out full of joy, "Thank heaven that we have found our dear child," and told his wife to keep the scythe out of the way, lest Tom Thumb should be hurt with it. Then he drew near and struck the wolf such a blow on the head that he fell down dead, and then he fetched a knife and a pair of scissors, slit up the wolf's body, and let it out the little fellow. "Oh, what anxiety we have felt about you," said the father. "Yes, father, I've seen a good deal of the world, and I am very glad to breathe fresh air again." "And where have you been all this time?" asked his father. "Oh, I've been in a mouse hole, and a snail shell, and a cow's stomach, and a wolf's inside, and now I will stay at home. And we will not part with you for all the kingdom in the world," cried the parents, and they kissed and hugged their dear little Tom Thumb, and they gave him something to eat and drink and a new suit of clothes, and his old ones were soiled with travel. Tom Thumb's travels. There was once a tailor who had a son no higher than a thumb, so he was called Tom Thumb. Notwithstanding his small size, he had plenty of spirit, and one day he said to his father, "Father, go out into the world. I must and will." "Very well, my son," said the old man, and taking a long darning needle, he put a knob of sealing wax on the end, saying, "Here is a sword to take with you on your journey." Now the little tailor wanted to have one more meal first, and so he trotted into the kitchen to see what sort of farewell feast his mother had cooked for him. It was all ready, and the dish was standing on the hearth. Then he said, "Mother, what is the fare today?" "You can see for yourself," said the mother. Then Tom Thumb ran to the hearth and peeped into the dish, but as he stretched his neck too far over it, the steam caught him and carried him up the chimney. For the time he floated about with the steam in the air, but at least he sank down to the ground. Then the little tailor found himself out in the wide world, where he wandered about and finally engaged himself to a master tailor. But the food was not good enough for him. "Mistress," said Tom Thumb, "if you do not give us better victuals, I shall go out early in the morning and write with a piece of chalk on the house door, 'Plenty of potatoes to eat, but the little meat.' So goodbye, Mr. Potato. What are you after, Grasshopper?" said the mistress. And growing angry, she seized a piece of rag to it and beat him off. But he crept underneath her thimble. Then he peeped at her, and put his tongue out at her. She took up the thimble and would have seized him, but he hopped among the rags, and as the mistress turned them over to find him, he stepped into a crack in the table. "He, mistress," cried he, sticking out his head, and when she was just going to grasp him, he jumped into the table drawer, but in the end she caught him and drove him out of the house. So he wandered on until he came to a great wood, and there he met a gang of robbers that were going to rob the king's treasury. When they saw the little tailor, they thought to themselves, "Such a little fellow might Such a little fellow might easily creep through a keyhole and serve instead of a picklock. Holloa, cried one. You giant Goliath, you come with us to the treasure chamber, you can slip in and then throw us out the money. Tom Thumb considered a little. At last he consented and went them to the treasure chamber. Then he looked all over the door and above and below, but there was no crack to be seen. At least he found one broad enough to let him pass, and he was getting through when one of the sentinels that stood before the door saw him and said to the other, "See what an ugly spider is crawling there." "I will put an end to him. Let the poor creature alone," said the other. "It has done you no harm." So Tom Thumb got safely through the crack into the treasure chamber, and he opened the window beneath which the thieves were standing, and he threw them out $1 after another. Just as he had well settled to the work, he heard the king coming to take a look at his treasure, and so Tom Thumb had to creep away. The king presently remarked that many good dollars were wanting, but could not imagine how they could have been stolen. So the locks and bolts were in good order, and everything seemed secure. As he went away, saying to the sentinels, "Keep good guard, there is someone after the money." When Tom Thumb had set to work anew, they heard the chink, chink of the money, and hastily rushed in to catch the thief. But the little tailor, as he heard them coming, was too quick for them, and hiding in a corner, he covered himself with a dollar, so that nothing of him was to be seen. And when he mocked the sentinels, crying, "Here I am," they ran about, and when they came near him, he was soon in another corner under a dollar, crying, "Here I am." Then the sentinels ran towards him, and in a moment he was in a third corner, crying, "Here I am." In this way he made fools of them and dodged him so long about the treasure chamber that they got tired and went away. Then he set to work and threw the dollars out of the window, after the other, till they were all gone. And when it came to the last, as he flung it with all his might, he jumped nimbly on it and flew with it out the window. The robbers gave him with great praise. "You are a most valiant hero. Will you be our captain?" But Tom Thumb thanked them and said he would like to see the world first. Then they divided the spoil, but the little tailor's share was only 1 farthing, which was all he had to carry. Then biting his sword to his side, he bid his robbers good day, and started on his way. He applied to several master tailors, but they would not have anything to do with him, and at last he hired himself as door servant at an inn. The maidservants took a great dislike to him, but he used to see everything they did without being seen by them, and he told the master and mistress about what they took from the plates, and what they carried away out of the cellar. And they said, Wait a little, will you? Oh, wait a little, We will pay you out." And took counsel together to pay him with some mischievous trick. Once, when one of the maids were moving the grass of the garden, he saw Tom Thumb jumping about and creeping among the cabbages, and she moved them with the grass, tied all together in a bundle, and threw it to the cows. Among the cows was a big black one, who swallowed him down without doing any harm. But he did not like his lodging. It was so dark, and there was no candle to be had. When the cow was being milked, he cried out, "Strip, strap, stroll. Will the pail soon be full?" But he was not understood because the noise of the milk. Presently, the landlord came to the stable and said, "Tomorrow this cow is to be slaughtered." And at that Tom Thumb was very terrified, and with his shrillest voice he cried, "Let me out first! I'm sitting inside here." The master heard him quite plainly, but could not tell where the voice came from. "Where are you?" he asked he. "Inside the black one," answered Tom Thumb. But the master, not understanding the meaning of all, went away. The next morning the cow was slaughtered happily. In all the cutting and slashing he escaped all harm, and he slipped among the sausage meat. When the butcher came near to set to work, he cried with his might, "Don't cut so deep, don't cut so deep, I am underneath." But for the sound of the butcher knife his voice was not heard. This next story... Okay, this next story is a bit long. Where was I? The master heard him quite plainly, but could not tell where the voice came from. "Where are you?" he asked he. "Inside the black one." And "Inside the black one," answered Tom Thumb. But the master was not understanding the meaning of it at all, went away. The next morning the cow was slaughtered. Happily in all the cutting and slashing he escaped all harm, and he slipped among the sausage meat. When the butcher came near to set to work, he cried with all his might, "Don't cut so deep, don't cut so deep, I am underneath." But the sound of the butcher's knife his voice was not heard. Now poor Tom Thumb was in great straits, and he had to jump nimbly out of the way of the knife, and finally he came through with his whole skin. But he could not get quite away, and he had to let himself remain with the lumps of fat to be put in a back pudding. His quarters were rather narrow, and he had to be hung up in the chimney in the smoke, and to remain there a very long while. At last, when winter came, he was taken down, for the black pudding was to be set before a guest. And when the landlady cut the black pudding in slices, he had to great care not to lift up his head too much, or it might be shaved off at the neck. At last he saw his opportunity and took courage and jumped out. But as things had gone so badly with him in that house, Tom Thumb did not mean to stay there, but betook himself again to his wanderings. His freedom, however, did not last long. In the open fields there came a fox who snapped him up without thinking. "Oh, Mr. Fox," cried Tom Thumb, "here I am sticking in your throat. Let me out again." "Very well," answered the fox. "It is true that you are no better than nothing. Promise me the hens in your father's yard, then I will let you go." "With all my heart," answered Tom Thumb. "You shall have them all, I promise you." Then the fox let him go, and he ran home, where his father saw his dear little son again. He gave the fox willingly all the hens that he had. "And look, besides, what a fine piece of money I've got for you," said Tom Thumb, and handed over the farthing which he had earned in his wanderings. "But how, you ask, could they let the fox devour all that poor chicks? Why, you silly child, you know that your father would rather have you than the hens in his yard." Okay, I think that'll be the last story for tonight. I will read the comments again. Oh, let's see. Okay, Dado Chama got my copy ready to read along. All right, nice. Yeah, that was fast. Yeah, it was the story about the first story. The copies are similar enough anyways. Yes, I'm pretty sure it was. I was checking. Pocket cheese. Yes, pocket cheese. You gotta have your pocket cheese. Demons in the Closet is my favorite horror monster and a classic. Right. Little Farmer story was very tricky. Yes, it was. So the first story was oh geez, I read so much. What was the first story? Uh, oh yes, it was the Frog Prince. Yes, the princess was. I don't think she kissed him. She like threw him, and then he became a prince or something. That was a lot of reading. Good night then. Thank you, Dad Ochama, for coming and pick Pokemon. Pokemon Rizuna. Let's see. I will end the stream here and raid someone. Okay, let's see. Who can I raid? Who can I raid? Let's see. Sorry. I'm looking. Looking for who I can raid. Okay, Kershie is online, so we're gonna raid her. Okay, let me go to let me go to ooh, that's the wrong thing. Let me go to Twitch. Oh wait, I need to go to the comments. Okay. Raid Kirsch. Let's see, Kirschche. Okay. Thank you. Good night to Dado Chama and Pokemon Rizuna. Have a nice day to the rest of you. Thank you for coming. Okay, let's raid. Okay. Bye. See you next time.